Hey everyone, it's another week of Find Your Film. It is Wednesday evening now. We are the fearsome threesome. I just made that up and it was horrible. I am Greg Srzavasti, the most boring out of the three. There's the Ultimate Warrior, aka Eric Holmes. Eric Holmes, how are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. I just got back from parts unknown and ready to talk shop.
Yeah, ready to talk shop. You call yourself the Ultimate Warrior, but on this, for people who watch our YouTube versions of Find Your Film, you don't have any face paint and your hair's not all big and frizzy. So ultimate demerit to you on that. But I'm glad that you picked a fine wrestler. Bruce Perky, how are you doing? You've been really busy watching a lot of stuff.
Busy and watching a lot of stuff, and I forgot to change my name, so I'll just tell you I'm going to be the Great Cabrusi. That's going to be my name for
Great.
today.
Yeah, we see the thing is we all have names. I'm Greg Srizabasti. We all have names, but we have for the first time in our very young, our freshman podcast, we have our first guest on. His name's Brad Finney. And Brad Finney, the thing about Brad Finney is he's just called Brad Finney because he doesn't need a name. His life has been about wrestling, at least a big part of it or a substantial part. Brad Finney, welcome to Find Your Film.
Thank you very much for having me on Find Your Film. When I did this, I didn't think I could put my name as Bradley Rotten. So I'm Brad Finney, aka Bradley Rotten, or aka Nothing Left, whatever you want to call me, considering all the things I do.
Both excellent monikers. First off, can you tell our listeners the genesis behind both names, Nothing Left and Bradley Rotten? Where did that come from?
Well, well, Nothing Left was a music thing that I started actually when I met Andrew and our friend Andrew Martin. When I had a band in high school, and then that band broke up, and everybody kind of drifted off and kind of went their separate ways. They went on to be a band called By All Means, who's based out of the South Bay, out of Torrance. And then I kind of moved around a bit. I lived in Arizona for a while. I lived in Idaho for a while. And I came up with this idea of like a friend of mine, he had said, well, when you feel like you have nothing, you have to make something out of it, right? And I kind of took that with me. And I thought, oh, Nothing Left would be a really cool name. And then there was a fanzine for a short period of time that had that name. And then that fanzine went away. And then so I thought, well, fuck it, I'll just keep it. Why not? I'll just keep it. So, and then that Nothing Left turned into like an acoustic project. Like I didn't really have a band, but I was still writing music and I had all these songs. And I was like, well, and a friend of mine said, well, why don't you just play acoustically? He's like, it's cool when you play acoustic, and this just had come from sitting in my friend's bedroom and like playing punk rock songs and stuff. So then when I moved here to Chico, California, I moved from Idaho, then back to Southern California. Then I moved up north here to Chico, and I just kind of came into town and was like, I hit up the record stores and like the little venues and was like, hey, I'm a musician. How do I book a show? Like I want to get booked. And then that turned into like a thing. And then I became Nothing Left. I originally performed under a luchador mask because I had also come up here to do pro wrestling. A friend of mine was dating my sister at the time, and he had trained with a guy named Zach Reeb, who owns and runs an independent company called Pro Championship Wrestling. And I came in and like I had known enough about the business to like know the handshake and sort of the mannerisms you're supposed to have in the business. And even then I was pretty green. Like I had never taken a bump. I didn't learn, like I knew the psychology of how a match was put together, but I didn't do it. And then I went through like a good year or two of manager training where I learned, well, first I sort of applied for a commentary job because one of the guys that was supposed to show up to do commentary for our local TV show we had, he just didn't show up. And my friend was like, oh, well, and he was already calling me Bradley Rotten. So it was like a nickname. And he was like, oh, Rotten can do it. And I was kind of like, well, I think I can do it. And they're like, well, all right, you got a job. And they kind of gave me an idea of how to put people over and how to like how to kind of help tell the story. And then I did that for like a year before I ever even I started managing. And then the promoter was like, you know, because I would go on and on about Bobby the Brain Heenan and how much I loved his work.
Oh, he's
And he was like,
amazing,
well, how
man.
would you feel about being a manager? I was like, oh, are you kidding me? That's like my dream. Of course yeah. And then I did that for like 2 or 3 years. And then I sort of like, I've always had difficulty like traveling, you know, like I can't drive. So I had a hard time getting to the shows. And then I sort of went back and pursued my music. I, I was doing it then, but I wasn't doing it as much. And then so I did nothing left for, gosh, like a good 8 years, 7 years without doing wrestling. But I was always kind of involved. I would advertise PCW because they were always good to me. You know, the promoter was always good to me and always like treated me well. And so I just felt that I should promote them because they were based out of the surrounding town, Oroville, the town next over to Chico. So I would just advertise them. And then finally one day I picked up the phone and was like, hey, I want to do this again, but I need help getting there. That's my only like requirement. I need help to get there. And then I did work for Pro Championship Wrestling for like another 8 years. And
Wow.
in that time, I had an opportunity to work with like a lot of like name talent, like Jacob Fatu, who is in the relation of all the Samoan wrestlers. There's like a
Right.
million of them, but he's in with like, The Rock and, Appa and Sika and all those guys. And then I had an opportunity to also work with Al Snow, if you guys know who that is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I remember Al
which was
Snow.
a really great experience. And yeah, and I've been doing that for like a really long time. So it's something I wanted to do when I was a kid. And it was kind of a trip that as an adult, I got to do pro wrestling, and I learned the bumps and the falls and all that stuff too. It's not a trampoline, but it was a really fun experience.
One thing with our podcast, whether we were once called Movie Mainline and now Find Your Film, one thing I've noticed is Eric Holmes. Sorry, Bruce. He's really a step ahead of the game. He'll give us a movie recommendation, and then me and Bruce will just catch on. Maybe a couple weeks later, Bruce is quicker to on the uptake than I am. And Eric is whenever Eric says something, the first thing that Eric told me was I remember him saying how much he loved this band called Hardline, and I started making fun of him because I thought it was just this rock band that I thought whatever. So and then the next day I'm listening to it, and I said, bleeping bleep. I don't swear because I'm an idiot. I said bleeping bleep. Eric was right. He has so many good recommendations. So last week he was saying, I just checked out Brad's wrestling video. It's amazing. And his music's amazing. And Brad thinks I was just putting him on, but we need to put him on. I was being serious. Eric, what did you see from Brad's work that you really wanted him to be a part of this episode here and now?
Well, I know you were talking about the Nail in the Coffin documentary, which I guess we're going to be talking about soon, or maybe we can fold this into it.
Yes.
Yeah, Brad hit me up on Facebook, and we were going back and forth. Won't mention everything we were talking about, but
It's okay. I'm pretty open about all that stuff,
Yeah, but at one point you showed me this. You showed me your one of your promo videos. I don't know who the wrestler is, but either way, so I've seen I've seen enough promo wrestling videos to know what they are. And his was really good. I loved his character, and I know me and you kind of went back and forth about this. You think you're full on heel on that? I think you have, and I don't know how to put my finger on it, but you have your character is such that you have enough sympathy to where I could see someone taking advantage of you to where you would put someone on the side of the crowd for face. but you're still the same. You've never changed. I could just see someone taking advantage of you so they feel sorry for you. And then you go back to the Bradley Rotten character and now they hate you again. Like I could see you kind of going back and forth if you wanted to. But it was such a wonderful character, and I got everything that I needed to out of that character within that short promo. And it was just fantastic. So I figure, hey, and then you said you knew quite a bit about wrestling, as you demonstrated just now. And yeah, I figured, dude, we're talking about a wrestling documentary. Let's get someone on here that knows a thing or two about wrestling. So it just made sense.
Now, Brad, we have you on. So those are nice words from Eric Holmes. We have you on for this first film, Nail in the Coffin: The Fall and Rise of Vampiro. And before we all get to that, just very quickly, a little plug on Nothing Left. I did listen to your stuff on Spotify, and the acoustic album, it's just really, really good. And it's very introspective, and it's really straight to the core. That I really love the lyrics. Did that take a long time for you to craft? Because you're basically opening up your guts and soul to the listener from your music. I'm thinking that's the way you wanted to go about your music.
Yeah. When I first started here in Chico and then wearing the mask, I remember the local record label I was on, Idle Vinyl Records. I remember the guy, Tony. He was like, have you ever thought about taking the mask off? He's like, it really doesn't have anything to do with what your songs are about. He's like, your songs are really very personal, and like, you're kind of telling a story, and your story doesn't really fit with the whole lucha mask thing. And I guess I was a little insecure, I suppose. I was like, nobody wants to see this face. And I was a big wrestling nerd too, like I just loved pro wrestling, and I was kind of like, yeah, I guess you're right. I guess it's a little too much gimmick. And that album that you heard was like my second release. I had done another album called Bury the Past, which was, if I wish I still had the original master copies, because I would put it online. It would be up on Spotify and stuff. But unfortunately, a lot of that stuff got lost. And then before that album, I had a live album that was kind of like, okay, well, the guy that ran the label, he, unknowing to me, he released it. He recorded a live show, and then he was like, I walked into the local record store, and I was like, what is this? And he was like, oh, yeah, I made 50 copies of that. I want to see that your music can sell. And it was kind of conflicting, because I was like, oh, you didn't tell me about it, you jerk. But then I was kind of like, oh, I guess that makes sense, business sense. Like, he wants to see if I'm enough of a local draw to like be a part of his label. So then we made the album Bury the Past, which I love, and I have a lot of affection to those songs, but the artist that I am, I really wish, like, I wish I could go back and do those songs again in a better recording environment, because those songs are like, some of those songs are songs I wrote when I was living in Hollywood. Even when I was staying with Andrew, I have a song called Scarred that like I used to play in Andrew's apartment. Like when I would go over there and hang out with him, I would jam on that song. And then the album that you heard, But What's Inside, I had written on 2nd and Broadway here in Chico. I was a busker for many years. It's just something I did to help maintain bills and so on. And then I wrote that album, and yeah, that album is like it's basically like all the stuff, all the ideas that I had when I lived in LA and didn't know what to do with, and I kind of sat on for a couple years, and then they sort of manifested when I lived in Chico. And that song, the first track on that album, At the Bottom of My Glass, is like, I think that was the first song where, if you've ever seen the Bouncing Souls documentary, they talk about the first time they wrote where they figured out where less is kind of more, and they were like, oh, this is how you write a song. And I think At the Bottom of My Glass is the first time like I wrote a song, and I had enough confidence to go, oh, I do have skill and talent, and like I should write more songs like this. And then from at the bottom of my glass, that spawned into that entire set of songs. I think there's only one off that album that was like an old song from like when I lived down in Southern California. But yeah, all that was written like on the street corner. You know, like I still have like napkins of like chorus lines that I wrote, you know, and like little folders of things that I wrote those songs down on. And that album was recorded in somebody's garage. A friend of mine here in town, I couldn't afford to like pay for a real studio. So, and
You should
that
just had
was,
real quick. You should have just had your buddy just record you at one of your shows and just release another album without you knowing about it.
right. Yeah. But I just didn't know how to do any of that. So like, I just asked a friend to do it and he did it. And like, it ended up turning out really good. The last song on that album is now a newer song, well, it's not new now, but it originally wasn't going to go on that album. And then when I released it through Spotify and all that stuff, I decided to put it on because it was just an extra song. And if you listen closely, before I start playing the song, you can hear the engineer talking to me. That performance that you hear is the second take of that song, because you can hear him go, oh, well, it sounds like you're a little more comfortable. Do you want to do it again? And I'm like, yeah. And then I just went through it.
That's cool.
So I don't know. I guess that's kind of how the songwriting process goes, though. Like right now, I have a set of like over 20 songs, and probably a quarter of them aren't going to end up being on an actual album because I had a band version of Nothing Left. And, unfortunately, that didn't stick around. So like a lot of those songs I wrote while I was in the band version, I still have, but like now I have a whole new set of like 5 to 8 songs that are like within the past couple of years. Like some of that stuff I shared with Eric. I think I shared you some of the stuff off of my my YouTube page.
Yeah.
And
by the way, if you need a tambourine player, Greg is pretty tambourine.
I'm a good listener. I know good music when I hear it, and Brad, your music was really good. We're gonna put your Spotify link for our show notes and our podcast, because listeners, you definitely have to listen to Brad's Nothing Left material. Very raw, inspired, I think, and really captures a place in a time. That's just my initial impression of it, and I'll be listening to more of that down the road. So your stuff will be on our show notes. Congratulations on that. We also, Brad, selfishly have you on for our first movie, Nail in the Coffin, The Fall and Rise of Vampiro. It's currently available on VOD and digital. It centers on the life of this wrestler named Vampiro. Bruce Perky, so far we have been enraptured by Brad's origin stories. You have barely said anything on the show, and that's my fault as a moderator. I'm going to throw it to you first, because we're all wrestling fans. You've been a wrestling fan too, but I would love to hear what someone like you, who you were a wrestling fan as a youth, but now you're more of a documentary fan. So what did you overall think about the story of Ian Hodgkinson, aka Vampiro, and how it's portrayed in this documentary?
Well, I think this is a fantastic documentary for fans and non-fans. I think you could dive right into this, because with Ian, you have a very compelling character. You have a really interesting story. So that alone should be enough for especially documentary fans, but wrestling fans even more so. And anyone who watched the movie The Wrestler, this is basically the real guy, you know what I mean? The path that he goes through in this is as compelling, if not more compelling, and there's some super strong parallels to the character you get in The Wrestler as well, especially as you're getting later in Ian's career and his beaten body and his, what the doctors say about his current state and ability to continue wrestling. And then, of course, there's a whole aspect of his daughter in this, and we'll talk about that a little bit too. But, he is not only wrestling his own, or not wrestling, but fighting with his own demons and of various types, but he's also dealing with the idea of trying to become the father he wants to be and how that shapes up in this movie. So there's a lot to like in this movie. Plus, it makes me want to see an awesome documentary on the whole lucha libre. Like, I want a history of that too, because I have a little bit of understanding of that, but when you see some of the footage in here, you're like, I want to know more about that Conan character. I want to know about all these guys. So that's my impression.
It's a cheap question, Bruce, but being a dad yourself, do you think you have an extra layer of relatability to Ian, or is that just a universal thing that everyone should get anyway? You know what I'm saying?
I think it's universal, because if you haven't been a father or a parent, you've been a kid, and you've either felt your parent was there for you or wasn't there for you. So I think that the idea of what it means to be a present parent or a parent that's trying to reconnect could be understood from either side or both sides, depending on your experiences. So I think that's pretty universal.
Eric Holmes, when did you see Vampiro? When did you see the fall and rise of Vampiro, Nail in the Coffin? Did you see it recently? And were you as moved by this documentary as me and Bruce?
Yeah, recently enough. Yeah. Oh man, the Vampiro. I really like him as a person. Like, he seems like a really cool guy, but he also has a couple of those kind of flaws in humans that really bug me. Him as a parent, he often paid lip service to being a good parent, and he paid lip service to, I put my daughter first, and then he never did. And he kind of got there towards the end. I got the sense, and even with the interview with his daughter, I get the sense that their relationship kind of eventually, got to where he was kind of saying it was. But yeah, there was the kind of half-assed parenting on his part. Brad, you could probably speak to this. He mentions right off the bat that he couldn't do a hold if you paid him. And I understand that wrestling's fake in that it's, if I'm doing a pile driver, I'm not really smashing your head on the ground. There are certain techniques you do to mitigate pain or try to make the moves as safe as possible while looking as dangerous as possible. And I get the feeling that him and other wrestlers don't know how to do the job of wrestling. Like, they know the characters, they know how to hurt people, but I don't think they know how to do it safely. And they probably should, because no one goes to a wrestling match to watch a snuff film. They don't go to a wrestling match to watch someone die. They don't go to a wrestling match to watch someone be paralyzed for the rest of their lives. They go because the characters. They go because Brad, me and you talked about the idea of the element of danger without being dangerous.
Right,
you have when you watch a movie and they're like The Crow, perfect example. I love The Crow. It's got a bunch of action, a bunch of people shooting each other, but Brandon Lee was unfortunately killed for real. I don't need to see that footage. That's not why I'm going to watch a Brandon Lee movie. Same thing with wrestling. And they would show, it looks like and maybe that's just the way they cut it together, but it looks like there's a bunch of really sloppy wrestling, and that kind of gets people hurt. And I guess the question to Brad would be, a lot of the moves they're kind of doing on the fly. But it seems as if in this they get a little too ambitious with the moves. Like, we're just going to go for it, when they really probably shouldn't. Like, there was that move where it shows where he breaks his neck. That move you probably should have practiced a couple times before just kind of throwing it out there in the ring and nearly killing someone.
That situation, he was already injured to begin with.
Yeah.
So he shouldn't have been, quote unquote, taking bumps. A
Yeah.
bump is the fall that you take. Now, in the early days, I shouldn't really be telling you any of this, because in the early days of wrestling, wrestling all came from the carny circuit. So wrestling has always been what we call a work. We're always working the audience, right? And it's always in gimmick. But I think what Vampiro, what he's saying at the beginning of the film, is that he was never really properly trained. There's a proper way to take those bumps and take those falls. And wrestling also isn't, this is what bothers me about wrestling now, is so much of it is choreographed. It's not supposed to be choreographed. There are sections of the match. So like we have what we call heat drills. Watch old wrestling, they'll lock up, and when they lock up, they're talking. They're discussing what they're going to do next, right? So lock up, guy gets him in a headlock. A headlock then transitions into circling around the ring, getting closer to the ropes. Let's say the bad guy gets the guy by the head and rams his head into the turnbuckle. The guy getting his head rammed in usually turns around and feeds him his body in the ropes. So now he's feeding him where to hit him. So the reason why we call it heat drills is because the bad guy is trying to get heat from the audience. They're trying to get the audience. And this is what I mean by telling a story in a match. Like, I, as a bad guy, what would my philosophy as a competitor be? Well, to cheat when the referee isn't looking, right? Because if the referee doesn't see it, then it's not illegal, right? The philosophy of the babyface is, I'm a competitor. I'm here in this competitive company, this sporting company, to win a heavyweight title. So then that brings sympathy from the fans, because the fans see that he's a fair player. And I think what Vampiro is saying in this documentary is, well, two things. One, I agree with you, Eric, is that none of us go to a wrestling event. I don't like hardcore wrestling. I don't want to pay to see guys get hit with light tubes. I don't want to see guys get thrown into barbed wire. I don't think they need to jump off of scaffoldings. In fact, this weekend, Matt Hardy got hurt. He hit his head on the concrete and was unconscious in a multi-billion-dollar company, and they allowed this to happen. And it's like backyard, untrained wrestling, and it's really like, it's very unnecessary. But one thing I noticed about the documentary is Vampiro didn't really talk about the training that he did get until you get sort of to the end of the movie. You sort of get a sense that he eventually learned. And then I think because he was a lucha guy, a lot of guys in the United States, like in the whole, Monday Night War era, that's another thing that's really weird about the wrestling business. If the guys don't want you to get ahead, they'll let you get fucked up. They'll let you, like, you know what I mean? They'll just not show you the right way, so that then you're injured and you can't work. So then you don't take their position.
That's pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
Could I
go
was going to hop in there really quick and say that, kind of hopping on what Eric was saying and what you're saying there, Brad, is that part of the impression I got too wasn't that they just didn't know how to do the wrestling right, Eric, but was that sometimes they didn't know how to do it. Sometimes it seems like there was a personal beef, and that would spill over, because they talked about places where people got mad because somebody took it too far, because they actually got angry, or they actually wanted to get the spotlight, or whatever it was.
Oh yeah,
on top of that,
female wrestler that like broke. Yeah, okay.
So I think there's that, and then on top of that, there's the incredible level of like drugs going on, and I think that causes a level of either sloppiness, or, I mean, obviously there's a level of emotional lack of control when there's that many drugs flying around in some of the performers, not all of them, but some of them. And that kind of leads to your other thing, is like, I thought it was really interesting as far as his character and also the fatherhood stuff, but I don't think he was a good father either. And I think one of the moments that I saw that you were mentioning, Eric, was there was a point when she's a little younger, and there's interviews when she's younger, and he's talking about how he does everything for his daughter. And there's one where he's like by the pool, I think, if I remember correctly, and he's saying all that stuff. And then in the next sentence, he's saying like how much coke they did, like how he did. And I'm just like, okay, dude, you can't have it both ways,
Yeah.
So anyway, Greg, I cut you off, but go for it.
No, this is just that I'm throwing this question out to you guys. I think one of the more tragic parts of this documentary, by the way, I think all of us really enjoyed the documentary, right? Everyone
Yes.
all around.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a big recommend. I think one of the I guess I don't know if it's tragic parts or resonant parts was, and I'm throwing this out there. He said, I think in his house in Ontario, Thunder Bay, Ontario, and he said,
Mm-hmm.
all I want to do is be left in a mausoleum and just keep me in this mausoleum and where I can play video games for the rest of my life and I don't want to be bothered. And I felt really connected because that's my ultimate dream now as an old man. I just want to be in a room and not podcasting with you guys, but just playing video games for the rest of my life. So my question to you is, do you think that's do you think he really means that, or does he really, is that just a pipe dream, or is he just so addicted to his work that he's just saying that, just like I'm saying, I never want to watch movies or podcasts? Do you think that's just an empty thought that he has regarding the dream of playing video games for the rest of his life?
I don't know.
I
He's not. At least at the beginning of the documentary, I don't think he was being very forthcoming with the camera. He was playing. Would Brad say the working? Or like he was playing a character. Like he knew the camera was on him. He knew that he didn't want to come off as a deadbeat dad, even though he kind of was. He wanted to come off a certain way, and so he was playing towards the camera. And I could be wrong, but I don't think it was till later that it kind of came through as his real self, which is what I liked about him. But as far as the video games, like hanging out, I believe that he just wants to hang out and play video games with his daughter. I believe that. But yeah, early on in the documentary, at least, I didn't really believe much of what he said. I think most of it was for show.
Brad, you're in the know, Brad. I mean, with your experience in the wrestling field, do you think it's just no matter how bruised you get, how emotionally or physically or spiritually damaged you get, is it too addicting of a sport and a career to actually just say, I'm just going to leave it at the door and move on? Do you think it's just too hard to shake?
That's yeah. I mean, it's kind of hard to talk about in a way because wrestling is a lot like punk rock and skateboarding. Like if you look at skateboard kids, a lot of them are like wayward kids, dysfunctional families, and like come from broken homes. And that's, I think, part of the reason why they do what they do. Professional wrestling is one of the most fascinating industries I've ever been associated with. It is very addicting. I've been away for a good 5 years, and I still at times, even as bad as I think wrestling is on the bigger scale, I miss it. There is a family element of it. There's like this camaraderie you get with the boys and girls that wrestle. What I got from the film and from Vampiro is that I get the sense that he can't walk away from wrestling because he doesn't know how to do anything else. And I relate to that. I mean, I'm not really good at anything else other than music, and like my knowledge of wrestling hasn't really ever gotten me anywhere, So I kind of understand. And I'm not making excuses for him, because you do see that he's definitely made some parental mistakes. And you can tell that, like, in that scene where he's like, all I want to do is sit and play PlayStation with my daughter, kind of breaks my heart, because on one hand, he has this passion for wrestling and he's really good at it, but he's also like destroyed his body. He's injured. Wrestlers don't make as much money as people think unless you're working for Vince McMahon. Wrestlers aren't millionaires. And in fact, even one part of the documentary, he talks about how he was like, I got offered a like $6 million a year contract. That's a lot of money, dude. I can't even imagine having $1 million. I mean, $6 million a year to work for a company for like 5 years or something.
Yeah.
That's like a ridiculous amount of money. And so it's kind of heartbreaking, because you see kind of the dysfunctional side of him, where you can see he has a hard time parenting because clearly he probably wasn't parented very well. I mean, he talks about his early life of being, with gangsters and dealing with drugs and all that stuff. And that, of course, is prevalent in wrestling. Like, I don't want to talk bad about any of the guys I work with, but all of us, like, even myself, I used to drink. All of us drank or smoked pot or did
Hey,
some
used to.
drugs, right? And there's nothing wrong with it, but there is something that they kind of go hand in hand because you're getting. I really hate the word fake because, yes, it is a work, and like if you watch old wrestling where they forearm a guy on the back, they're forearming him on the chest, in the back. And when they take bumps, they tuck their head and they spread their arms out and they make sure they don't hit the bottom of their hip. All of those things are done to protect them. But then when guys take liberties and like if a guy has an issue with you and he slugs you in the face, you're on live television a lot of times. So like you have to balance this. It's a work. And then you have to balance this, like when things get out of hand. Like I think there's a scene in the movie where Vampiro is trying to keep everybody at bay because there's all these egos. And you've got egos that are loaded with steroids and muscle and like drugs and although it's decided by a promoter where you are positioned in the company, everybody wants to be anointed that championship belt because it's like winning an Oscar. It's like getting an award for your work. So like it causes real friction and conflict. The backstage world of wrestling can get very, very real. In a theatrical sport that, for lack of a better word, is, fairly choreographed. So when I watch this movie, I feel the reality of wrestling, and I relate to it because I've been in the business. I've had people do really, mean-hearted things to me in the business, but I've also, I have a love and like, I would jump in front of moving traffic for any of those guys. No joke. Like, I mean, because they're like my brothers, I really have a great deal of respect for them. I can't imagine being a wrestler, though, and being a parent and having to deal with parenting, which, I mean, I can't even imagine just being a parent. I don't think I would be able to be responsible enough to be a parent. I'm not even financially responsible enough to be a parent. But to parent and then have to have a career that is something that's so damaging to your body. And like, what do you do when you don't really know how to do anything else? And that's, I think, the sad part about it, because when you finish the film, you don't get a sense that this guy is comfortably retired. You get a sense that he's probably going to step in the ring again.
Actually, that's one of the things I liked a lot about this, because you hear about all the bumps and bruises they take, but in this documentary, it's pretty clear that his body is just completely ravaged by the end of the documentary, where he's just kind of like walking, just kind of barely keeping up, and he's following his daughter around, but like he can barely stay up on his own volition.
There's that scene where he can barely step off the curb.
Yeah,
like he can barely step off the curb onto the ground. It's like a 4-inch drop,
And then the next scene, he's going back on in the ring again. It's like, dude, you could barely walk out of a Denny's. How the fuck are you gonna get in a ring to fight someone?
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. Okay. So that's Nail in the Coffin: The Fall and Rise of Vampiro, available on VOD digital. I think ultimately it will be available on Blu-ray. I remember Brad, before we started taping, he said he's definitely going to check out if it comes out on Blu-ray. I believe it does. He's going to pick it up. I'm going to pick it up as well. Really interesting film. Before we get out of there, this review, Bruce, you have any final couple things to say about this documentary before we get on?
I just think, like we said, it's really interesting, and just figuring out the world he's in is very interesting, and also kind of like Eric is talking about, deciphering the reality versus the public image he's trying to give versus what's really happening is a fun not fun, I guess I would say. I guess a very intriguing and very fascinating journey. So it's worth it, even if you don't like him ultimately in some ways. That's not the point. The point is seeing this path that he's been on. So
Cool. All right, that's an awesome film. Brad, Finney, thank you so much for joining us for our first segment. Before you go, you have any final thoughts or just reflections or things you want to say before you bounce out?
Yeah, I thought it was a fantastic documentary. I think it probably was a little harder for me to watch because I guess I'm a little objective to the wrestling business, so I understand these guys. And I don't know Vampiro, but I know there are guys in the business that I'm fairly close with or that I talk to on a regular basis that know him. And so I had this weird connection with him. It was like I felt like I got to get to know the guy behind Vampiro as a documentary. And there are a lot of wrestling documentaries. I think a lot of them try too hard to like focus on the negative and don't really give us a positive ending. So I felt like, although it did kind of feel like the ending was a little, like I felt it was a little negative in that clearly, I mean, I hope Vampiro, I hope he sticks, if he does stay in the business, he stays in a backstage capacity. I think he really would probably make a big contribution to Lucha Libre as a promoter and a booker and, you know, the guy that kind of puts everything together. But I really hope he doesn't feel like he has to get in the ring to make money because, like, I mean, he's crippled by the end of this thing.
yeah.
I thought it was one of the better wrestling documentaries, though, of all the wrestling documentaries I've seen. And I would give it a high recommend when it comes out on, you know, the streaming apps and the, you know, Fandango Now or Vudu or wherever you go and you buy films. I would definitely say it's worth a rental and it's worth a buy because I think you'll learn a lot about the sacrifice these guys take. Like literally to just entertain you for the $20 or $30 that you spend on a ticket to go see them.
Yeah, great recommendation, Brad. Before you bounce out, a little piece of bad news for you. I've been trolling Ian Hodkinson's Instagram feed. This movie, I don't know if you knew this, Bruce. Obviously, at the end of the movie, it's not a spoiler, but they talk about how he has Alzheimer's, early onset Alzheimer's, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he actually, Brad, check this out. He actually said he wants to return to the ring. The only thing, the last 2 years they said he was in Nevada. The last 2 years he's been being treated for Alzheimer's. He's talked about wanting to actually return to the ring and fight. And if it wasn't for COVID-19, he would have been in the ring by October, but he had to cancel it because of coronavirus. Can you imagine that, Brad? Can you seriously, right?
You know, God, it's just crazy, but that's the wrestling business. I mean, I've met so many guys like Mick Foley is the same way. Sweetheart of a dude. I've met him and he's a real nice guy, but he can barely walk, you know, like, and if Vince McMahon were to say to him, hey, I'm going to give you $1 million check to come out to the ring, but I want you to take a bump. I guarantee you he would do it because, I mean, who would say no to, it's like getting asked to do, it would be like asking me to open for Flogging Molly again. Yeah, I would do it. And asking me, knowing that my hands have arthritis and I can't really play my guitar, I would, like, it's a weird addiction, man, but the whole entertainment thing, and it sticks with you and it's heartbreaking, but at the same time, I kind of get why he's doing it. You know, like when wrestling is one of those businesses, man, like you can't, I guess it would be comparable to actors and actresses you guys see on films all the time. And they get to a point to where you're kind of like, isn't it time to go? Like, you know, like, isn't it, we love you and we want to see you in these movies, but you know, I think it's time that you hang up the boots kind of thing, you know?
Well, the Vampiro, I don't even know how he physically can do it.
You just-
like we said, like he couldn't even walk down a curb, but he's gonna hop in the ring, and
Yeah, I don't either.
that there's a lot of physical prowess going. Like you said earlier, even though it's air quotes fake, it doesn't mean that it's there's still a lot of danger and there's still a lot of athleticism involved. And if you can't even walk out of a Denny's without leaning on 18 walls, I don't understand how you can get in the ring and think that you can.
And he even says it.
Well, even get in the ring. Even getting in the ring just seems like a complete chore for him.
Well, there's a point where he even says to his daughter that, like, and he's absolutely right, but I mean, he really can't wrestle at the pace that these young guys do. I mean, look at what the young guys do. I mean, they do all these corkscrew backflip things, like things I would have never even dreamed of as a kid that I would ever see in the ring. And like, he can barely get in and out of the ring. There's a part of the film where he tries to step out of the ring and he's like,
yeah,
I don't know what he loads himself up on to be able to even hit the rope.
Everything. Just sticking all at me.
Well, Brad, thank you so much for the first segment. We could go all night with you, man. Thank you so much. We will anything you want to. I'm gonna put your Spotify link on the show notes. You want us to put anything else regarding it? Whatever you want to plug.
Nothing Left is also on Facebook. You can find me there. I think it's Nothing Left Chico.
Okay.
And then you can also find my YouTube page, which in recent years I put up like some of my newer demos and stuff. And that's Nothing Left Official.
Okay.
You'll see it. It's like a little picture of a skull with crossing guitars. And I'm going to be putting up new stuff there. And then, believe it or not, I do have a podcast. I have a podcast where I do wrestling.
I don't believe it.
And I try to do something close to what you guys do and talk about films. I pretty much I pick a movie or two and I basically I recommend this or I don't recommend this. I try not to get too intricate with it because I'm not really like a film school guy or anything like that. But I much like Andrew was sheltered when I was younger, so I watched a lot. I mean, I spent a lot of time by myself. So, and that podcast is called the Rotten Radio Podcast.
Oh, wow.
And you should be able to find it almost anywhere. I know it's on the radio.com app. And I did 3 episodes and then COVID kind of came and like I kind of stopped. But I'm going to start doing it again. I should have a new episode up pretty soon where I review the last AEW pay-per-view. And I don't know if I'm spoiling, but I have a certain somebody that we all know who is going to be a part of my film section of the podcast. And me and that certain somebody that we all know is going to be like my co-host in that section because
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson, yes. No,
His ghost.
it's Andrew. He's Andrew's the guy that I always go to. He recommends so many good movies. And you guys recommend really good movies too. I fell in love with Uncle Peckerhead when I saw it.
Hey.
One of the best movies I've seen in a really long time. So, and thank you for having me on the show. Anytime you guys do anything on wrestling, I will hope that you'll contact me and want me to be on because I thank you for allowing me to get to see the movie before anyone else, kind of,
Yeah.
And thanks for having me on as like a wrestling expert, I guess.
All right,
Hey,
thank you,
you're more of
brother.
a wrestling
Brad.
expert than us.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you. Good
Thank
seeing
you very much. You guys have a wonderful night, okay?
You too. Take care.
All right.
All right. I think I can just see. Let me try this one.
He's trying the
Yes.
buttons.
Okay, there. I did the self remove on. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have listened to Brad's music. It's really good. I wasn't blowing
Yes.
smoke. It was really interesting, and I don't know the whole punk thing as well as you guys do, but I was really into what he had to throw down. So yeah, that's I could seriously. I was thinking of My Dinner with Andre, My Dinner with Brad. I could literally just sit and listen to him speak. I mean, we were little. This is almost an hour, right? We were just listening to Brad for an hour talk.
This could be a standalone.
I'm thinking we should. We should probably split this up, but
Yeah, we should. This is going to be a 5-hour podcast, right?
Yeah, I would love to have him on again. I just
Yeah.
like every time he started talking, I'm like,
I know. I can no, you guys can barely listen to me for longer than 40 seconds, and that's because you guys have good taste. This guy can go on for 40 to 50 minutes. He's kind of like Andrew Martin. I can just listen to them just speak just on end for quite a while. So I can't wait till they do what is it, the Rotten Radio thing together, that segment. I'm gonna
Yeah.
definitely listen to that. Now, find your film. First segment done. That was Vampiro, Nail in the Coffin, the rise and fall, the fall and rise of Vampiro. We've got to get to this. We got to get to a rewind before Bruce and Eric, you talk about your movie recommendations. Eric Holmes, the ticket finally worked. It was a Friday. It was a good day. It was a Christopher Nolan day. It was a turd day. Was it a turd day for you, Eric Holmes? Or was it an awesome seminal experience, that being Tenet?
Tenet. So I saw Tenet, and I need to watch this movie a lot more times.
Why are you shaking your head? Hey, Bruce, did you know when you say Tenet forward, you can say it backwards too? Did you know that? That's clever.
It's a palindrome. This Interstellar is my favorite Christopher Nolan movie.
Okay.
This might top it.
Whoa. What?
I love this movie. Okay. First of all, let's talk about that open. Bruce, I know you hate this movie. I know this. Okay, I understand that you hated everything about this movie.
Greg is so happy,
and I'm not. And
I'm
not gonna.
Not happy. I'm shocked.
And I'm not going to try to change that. Can we at least agree that opening scene at the opera was fucking awesome?
okay.
We didn't see the same movie. We did not see the same movie.
Well, no. Instead of you had me at hello, you had me at goodbye when you said Interstellar is your favorite Christopher Nolan movie. So I might be on Bruce Perkins' camp. But
now see,
yeah.
Okay, so the problem a lot of people have with Christopher Nolan is the emotional aspect, and with movies like Interstellar or Inception or this with Tenet, I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I'm looking at it from like a science perspective, because this is the weird thing is I'd said I don't want to give anything away. I don't know what you could possibly give away from this, but this movie reminded me a lot of Primer. When I first saw Primer, I'm like, I have no idea what I'm watching, but I know the filmmakers do. And then so I go watch it again, and then I start picking apart little parts, and I'm not picking it apart to figure out what the story between the characters are, because I don't. I want to know what the how the science works, how the machinations work within the movie. And it's the same deal with this, because it's not. The weird thing about this is it's not so much about time travel, because they bring up entropy. And you think, when I think of entropy, I think of like quantum mechanics and quantum physics, where the macro world that we live in follows the general relativity, and then when you get down small enough, physics kind of changes, and it becomes quantum physics, and that's where the theory of everything comes in. Is the theory of everything is the thing that connects the two, and we don't have one yet. And the thing I found interesting about Tenet is that it seems to, and I don't, because I only saw it once. I think the more I see it, the more I'm going to kind of pick apart little bits like this. But Tenet to me seemed like a macro illustration of what quantum physics might be, because you have people going forward, that makes sense. You got people going backwards, that makes sense. But you got people going forward and backwards at the same time, which happens in the quantum realm. It doesn't make sense, but it kind of happens, and I don't know. I'm not even making much sense myself.
You just gave a very intellectual and cerebral look at what Bruce Perky, who's probably the most cerebral, and you know what's so funny? I think I'm living in a Christopher Nolan universe, because Bruce Perky is the most well-spoken and eloquent out of all of us three. Eric, I'm sure you won't disagree with that. And he just said Tenet is a turd. Whereas you always say me and you we're just dumbskis, and you just throw out this really very introspective, insightful. You're making me want to see Tenet regarding quantum
Well,
physics and everything like that.
Now, to Bruce's point, though, I would say for best results when you watch Tenet, first of all, even though Bruce disagrees, that opening scene at the opera is one of the best, where they all just kind of pass out and they have a shootout with a bunch of people sleeping, and there's someone's like sleeping, and then all of a sudden they're like, spoiler alert, people die, but there's no blood. But anyway, but yeah, there's a bunch of cool things in there. I just couldn't wrap my head around the physics of it. But I would say if you're going into Tenet, and they even mentioned this in the movie, ignore that, because you will get lost immediately. Just kind of follow whatever stories there. And the stories, to that point, I agree with Bruce. It's a James Bond spy movie. The story itself, it's whatever. It's just kind of there to hang this idea on. But follow the story as best you can. Don't try to figure out the rules of the physics in the movie. You will not do it. That's something to wait till, if you want to, that's something to wait till later and pick apart. I can't imagine anyone would take all of this in on the first viewing, because it gets deep into some shit. And I get the sense that Christopher Nolan knows what he's doing. It's probably not perfect, because his movies aren't. You find little tidbits here and there, but I do believe that the parts that I missed, he's got answers for, and even the parts that I hung on to, it's like, yeah, that kind of makes sense in a way.
But why would this be your favorite Christopher Nolan? Is it because of the?
Well, it's not. It's not. It's still Interstellar, but again, I just saw this once. But this is a kind of movie, much like Primer, that I don't get much of, but I can't wait to just dig into this and
So
see
high recommend. Is this a high recommend for you? Like,
it is for me. Now, again, to Bruce's point, and this is weird. I love this movie. I love this, but also to Bruce's point, I could see that someone that isn't ready to invest as much of themselves into the movie, they'll probably watch it and see, hey, that opening opera scene is awesome, and then just check out for the rest of it. So it just kind of depends on what you want. If something like watching Primer, or actually a better example, Southland Tales.
Okay. Yeah.
Take Primer, Southland Tales, merge them together. If that sounds like a complete headache for you to unravel, stay the fuck away from Tenet.
Bruce, could you see that point? Could you see?
Oh, I can see that point. I think that the fun to be had here is the fun to be had here is the puzzle. If you like solving the puzzle and you don't care about the plot very much, because the plot is kind of not very important. It's almost a MacGuffin. Like the actual overall story plot is almost a MacGuffin. It doesn't really matter. It's really all about the intricacies of how everything intertwines. And if that's what you're into, that's great. What I would say as a counter is Devs, the series by Alex Garland this year, the one-off series that only has a beginning, middle, and end, and is one piece, is a better discussion of quantum mechanics than any movie that's ever been.
Wow.
And it's the better sci-fi than any of those that you mentioned, and has an emotional basis that is easy to tie into and better characters.
Okay.
So,
well, real quick, I wouldn't say that Tenet is an illustration of quantum mechanics. I would say that it's
it toys with it, though.
It does, but it toys with it in a macro world, which is getting closer to the theory of kind of speaking to the theory of everything. Which, I didn't mention this, but as I was watching Tenet, I got really excited for a Christopher Nolan movie that has not been made yet, because I think because Christopher Nolan's made plenty, Memento, fucked with time, but you'll watch it and you get it. Inception deals with time. You watch it, you get it. Interstellar deals with time, and actually probably one of the most real ways with the black hole and how
Right.
time dilation works.
The Dark Knight Rises deals with the wasting of our time. But I just wanted
Wow.
to throw a
Zing.
song.
But this one, the learning curve for this movie is huge.
Okay.
I could be wrong. I think Christopher Nolan's testing us. He's got one super mind fuck of an idea. He's like, we'll see how they do with Tenet. They hate it. They're not ready for this yet. But then I don't know for sure. He's probably got some really freaking weird ass idea, and I can't wait to see this. But
unfortunately, Eric, I know what he's doing. It's actually it was in the trades about 20 minutes ago. He's just signed on to do a reboot of the Michael Almereyda film Tesla, with Ethan Hawke returning as Tesla, and this time out, Nikola. In this world, he's just gonna call him Nikki. Runs back and forward in time.
Here's the thing. I guarantee Christopher has reverence for Tesla and would know what makes him interesting. In fact, he's the only person that made a movie with Tesla in it that's like, I mean, it's not a Tesla movie, but it's the movie you go to. Because
I love Nolan.
That's all we got.
I just don't appreciate when I just found the notes. He said instead of using for the ending, the closing song for this Tesla reboot, he's going to use a song called "Sowing the Seeds of Love." That's going to be the difference between this and like the classic. Sorry, I love Nolan. I can't wait to see Tenet.
I do like the part at the end of Tenet where John Washington was like, "Everybody."
Oh, sorry.
I really got to stop shitting on that movie.
We're so sorry. I remember when Anderson Cowan used to say, I don't like, this is a private conversation Anderson and I had. He said, Greg, I don't like when we just, and he said this on the podcast, I don't like when we stomp down, put our foot down on independent movies. We should really champion independent films. So we love you, Michael Almereyda, and we love you, Nikola Tesla and Ethan Hawke. Now, Bruce Purkey. Okay. What is your?
I do
your
love
first...
them. I just didn't like that movie, but yeah, we can.
Yeah,
go
we love his stuff. Yeah. Okay, so Bruce Purkey, what do you got? What's your first recommendation, or do you have rewind? What you got first?
I'm not going to do a rewind, although I will mention really quickly for anybody, since you mentioned it really quickly last week. We did do a one-off YouTube available episode for people to watch. It's kind of a super podcast get-together spoiler discussion of. What did we do the discussion of, Greg?
I'm thinking of ending things.
Podcast super group.
That's right. So go check that out. I think it's a lot of fun, and we have our betters in the podcast world join us in William Lindis from Movie Bears podcast and Andrew Martin from Andrew Watches Movies. So I just wanted to make that as my quick little rewind, I guess. And then I will start with a very small independent movie to counteract what we've been doing. And that is a movie on Netflix called, I got to look at my notes here because I'll say it wrong, Lingua Franca. And it is a 2019 festival circuit, but only 2020 real circuit. You know how that works. And it is directed by Isabel Sandoval, and it stars Isabel Sandoval. And she plays a undocumented trans woman living in New York City, and she is from the Philippines, and it's a very small movie, and it's a really cool movie. And I'll just tell you her basic situation. She is a caretaker to an elderly woman, and the elderly woman is kind of on the stages where she's kind of got first stage dementia or Alzheimer's going on, so she needs a caretaker to help kind of keep her on track and do stuff for her. And very quickly, you kind of see how their relationship works. And then you very quickly get to meet her grandson, who is Alex. Oh, the grandmother's Olga. Her grandson is Alex, and you can tell he's been gone from the family for about a year or two because he's been struggling with, you don't know exactly, but some kind of drug, alcohol situation. He's kind of coming back, trying to get his life back on track. So he's going to be helping take care of the grandmother when Olivia, who is played by the director, when she's not there and stuff, he'll kind of help out too. So really quiet movie, a really character-driven movie, and really, really excellent performance by Isabel Sandoval. And what I love about it is the fact that she is a trans woman is important in the movie, but it isn't like the focus of the movie. And almost it's more of a focus of how she's dealing in Trump's America. This takes place now, how she's dealing with the idea of at any moment ICE might get her, and how in her situation she has to basically pay for somebody to become a husband. That's where it starts with her. You see her, and she's like thousands of dollars into this guy that's supposed to become her husband so she can stay in America. How that falls apart, and then how she slowly starts to build a bond with, as you might guess, with Alex, the grandson. And their kind of interaction is very interesting. It's a very quiet, stressful movie in a strange way, because the way she performs in this role, obviously she directs it too, so she's in control of everything. She plays it with an incredible like sadness throughout the movie, but you also see the weight of her constant like fear and trepidation that at any moment she might just be taken off the street and deported. And also the weight of knowing her situation and knowing that it's almost impossible for her to get out of this without basically, buying a husband. It's a really, really interesting movie. And the character of Alex is also really interesting, how they play that out. I would highly recommend it if you like, super character driven, effective, quiet indie dramas, but done really well with a point of view that you may not be used to seeing, I would say. And it's a really good movie.
Wow, Lingua Franca on Netflix. Yep. I have not subscribed yet to Shudder. I apologize for that, but I think I'm noticing, or maybe I've just been so ignorant, but I've honestly been noticing that Netflix is coming out with some really good content. Some just really, really good stuff is coming out via Netflix, or maybe I just haven't noticed. So
it's true. But you have to. The hard problem with Netflix is it's such a vast amount of content. You have to kind of dig for it. But they even had this up on their main page. So there's somebody at Netflix that is curating some really interesting stuff, because they had Circus of Books came out there, and it was out for a few days out there too. So you can find them, and they do feature them a little bit, but they disappear pretty quickly, and then it'll be taken over by the next, middle of the road action movie. So you got to kind of catch it when it's there. This is one that actually William Lindis had thrown out there a little while back too, and had said, "Hey, check this out. This is worth looking at." So usually, if he points one out, I try to take a look at it. So.
Yeah, William Lindis from Movie Bears podcast. It was nice spending time with him, like you were saying. He has very insightful things to say about thinking of ending things. Now, let's start thinking of starting things with Eric Holmes. It's not a rewind. This is some new recommendations. I apologize for 3 weeks. Or 4 weeks. I haven't seen Uncle Peckerhead, so I've got to get on the ball with that. And my fault. That's my fault. So, apologia for me. But what is your first recommendation this week?
All right, my first recommendation is a movie I've never talked about before, and it's called Uncle Peckerhead, and go check it out. Kidding, but seriously, Uncle Peckerhead's awesome. This next one, since we're talking about other podcasters, and Bruce probably knows what I'm talking about, but I don't know how much I can talk about. But we heard from our old buddy Louis Lacow, and there might be something going on later on, which inspired me to watch a little movie from 1957, directed by Ed Wood, called Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Oh, wow. Okay.
This evil aliens attack Earth and set their terrible Plan 9 into action. Their Plan 9, if you don't know, is it, would that be a spoiler, or is this movie spoil-proof? I think
spoiler-proof.
I don't think you watch this movie for the twists. I don't think that's the reason you watch Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Plan 9, just Ed Wood. I haven't seen many Ed Wood movies. I've seen this in
Glen or Glenda?
No, I haven't seen that.
Bride of the Monster?
The creep one, or the whatever. I forgot the other one anyway. But yeah, I'm not well versed in Ed Wood other than the story everyone knows about him. But I have seen this a couple times, and this version I saw the colorized version, which actually has some pretty cool things in it. One of them being when you see that aliens, the aliens in the movie look like humans. But there's a part in the colorized version, it's not in the black and white version. There's a part in the colorized version where one of the cops punches the alien and his face turns green and then morphs back to a skin tone. And that, as much shit as Ed Wood gets for being a bad filmmaker, and I don't know if he had anything to do with that. I'm assuming he had something to do with the colorization, but that was a cool thing. Or maybe that was just something that was added way later on. I don't know. This movie's stupid, but it's like the good kind of. It's a good kind of stupid. You know, it's the fun, you know, midnight movie. Get drunk with your friends and watch, and you know, you can laugh at it, but there's still some fun things here. And one of the things I always loved about Ed Wood that they Tim Burton showed so wonderfully in the movie Ed Wood is that, you know, he was the kind of filmmaker that was very pure about the movies he was making. And this movie shows that. Like, he didn't have the money or the means to, you know, maybe make the perfect movie, but he had what he had and he put it to the best use that he knows how. And this is kind of this in a way is kind of a celebration of music or a celebration of movies and art in general, because, you know, this is a kind of movie that shows what's possible, you know, when you just have a love for what you're doing and drive to tell a story. As stupid as that story may be, but
How did you see it, Eric? You saw it? You rented it, or I'm sorry, YouTube?
No,
or?
it's this on YouTube. I'm pretty sure this is public domain. They have so many versions of YouTube. You want to make sure you get the full frame version because they have the widescreen version, but it's kind of stretched out a bit. But to Ed Wood's point, probably doesn't matter. Either one's fine. But yeah, this movie's really fun, and it's you know, I think I've heard it be called the worst movie ever made. This is not the worst movie ever made. This movie is way too fun and enjoyable to be the worst movie ever made. The worst movie ever made goes towards The Snowman, or as Bruce Perky might say, Tenet.
You know,
I'll put it this way: Tenet is better than The Snowman. I'll give you that.
You know, in our Find Your Film universe, I'm gonna put Tenet is a turd right up there with Charles Foster Kane saying Rosebud. It's going to be that memorable.
Tenet is a turd.
Tenet is a turd. That is so. We should have cut that up and put it up on our Cinematics Facebook group. That is an audience drawer. Now,
Rosebud, also Tenet. Dude.
Now, okay, so I have one recommendation along with the Vampiro thing, The Social Dilemma. The Social Dilemma. This is, I have a horrible thing when I'm gonna stop with this joke. The last episode of Cinematics, I had this running joke about how I never open my emails, and there's a ton of movies on my Gmail inbox that I could get for free, and I just never do it because I'm a horrible journalist. I actually requested for Find Your Film, not Cinematics, for The Social Dilemma. So I actually asked the PR people, even though I asked them for a screener link for The Social Dilemma, which was on Netflix, and I thought it was coming out September 11th. They actually sent it to me yesterday, which was on a Tuesday. The reason why it was stupid was because I had no idea Social Dilemma actually debuted today. I didn't need the link. It's just basically you're asking for a link which you don't need. I was planning on watching it this morning, and so it's just stupid. I need to get better at both podcasts and reporting. But The Social Dilemma on Netflix now. You don't need any screening link. You don't have to be a media member. It's streaming. It's a documentary. For some reason, I've been watching a lot of documentaries lately. One of them is because of the fault of Eric Holmes, because I remember there was this documentary we covered called Be Natural. what is it? The life of Elise Guy Blaché. Be Natural, the untold story of Elise
The Untold Story of Elise Guy Blaché.
Guy Blaché. By the way, for our Find Your Film universe, I'm gonna interview Pamela B. Green on Friday, so we're gonna have some of those cuts on our
Nice.
podcast stuff.
Oh,
So that should be really cool.
that's
That
gonna
should
be awesome. I
that's
can't
gonna be
wait I can't wait for that.
again, great job, Eric Holmes, on tracking that movie down. But The Social Dilemma, because several weeks ago, maybe over a month ago, we reviewed this movie called Spree, which was a thriller
Mhm.
about the guy who's killing people in his lift. It's not a lift, but it's one of those kind of things. But a lot of it was about social media, follow for a follow, this video slaps, all the stuff that if you're content, if you're a content creator, you can relate to. Now, the fortunate part of The Social Dilemma, you're thinking, okay, a movie about the destructiveness of social media, this sounds very boring. So when you see this on your Netflix algorithm on the main page, you're going to think to yourself, I know all of these things already. I probably do. Why should I even watch this documentary? And I just think it's for 90 plus minutes, it's worth it. There's a narrative. There's a little bit of a narrative story featuring Skylar Gisondo and Kara Hayward. Kara Hayward was in a Wes Anderson film. I forgot the name of the film. Moonrise Kingdom. She was in that movie. She was the young girl, and she's in this movie too. So they have a sort of a fictionalized story of this middle class family living in the suburbs and how their lives are affected by social media. So that's a little bit of a story that is interwoven through the documentary, but ultimately the heart of it is it's a talking head documentary with experts, previous employees of Google, Pinterest, Instagram, all of the social media platforms we use, and they basically espouse to the camera the destructiveness of these platforms and how it's really pretty much infesting our lives and our behavior, the way we act towards each other. And it's stuff we've heard before, but the way it's presented to us on a plate, the way it's structured is worth watching. There is a lot of value added insight. Again, and you know what? There may be people who really don't know the destructiveness of screen time or just basing your entire life by looking at the screen. And I think a social dilemma is a 90 plus minute PSA that is actually worth diving into. And a lot of it focuses on this guy named Tristan Harris, and he's a former Google employee, and he founded this organization which is trying to bring a humane version to how we do technology, which to me personally can't be done because we've already opened Pandora's box anyway. But I like how the documentary frames that, hey, maybe there's another way on how we present our media, on how, instead of gaming the audience, we can actually uplift the audience. And one of the craziest thing about this movie is they have these really interesting insights. Like each person in this world, we've become our own Truman Show. But when we log into something, the camera is actually on us. We've become the product of social media. That's it. We are our own Truman Show by how much we share and how much data we give to people. The end goal is not the product. The end goal is the user. The user, us, millions of us are the products. And that's the thing that we can definitely take away from The Social Dilemma, streaming on Netflix. Again, highly, highly recommended, educational, insightful, fun to watch actually in a weird way. So Eric Holmes, Bruce Perky, another recommendation.
Yes. So this one is couldn't find it available on any streaming platforms, but it is for streaming video on demand rental for $2-3. It's pretty cheap. Okay. Or you can get a DVD or a Blu-ray, which is always good.
Should they get a Blu-ray? Is that a teaser? Should they get the Blu-ray? I hope so.
I would say if sounds like your cup of tea, maybe so.
Okay.
So I won't speak for you two, but I know for myself, at my age, anime has not been a huge part of my cinema, diet, I guess. Anime is definitely a huge part of anybody probably under 30. I mean,
Sure.
Anime is there. I mean, I don't know about you two. Maybe you've had a lot of anime in your life. And considering what I'm going to be doing for my upcoming deep dive focus that we're going to have, I thought, well, I'm going to find an anime one to watch for this week. And I thought, well, I actually listened to an episode that Lewis and I think it's his cousin, Brandon Lacow. Those two are both on the Find Your Film, not Find Your Film, but Man Bites film. Too many films. And they talked about
Bruce. They're now called Three Idiots with a Mic.
Oh my gosh. So much rebranding. So much rebranding. Anyway, on one of their many endeavors, they talked about a little movie called Your Name. And this is actually the highest grossing anime film of all time, I think now. Or it has been the highest grossing. It's from 2016, directed by Makoto Shinkai. And I think it beat Spirited Away, or maybe they're neck and neck. Spirited Away might have got re-released and taken over again. But either way, it's way up there.
Oh my God. Check this out. 98% tomato meter. Audience score, 94%. How many ratings on the audience score? 12,340. Insane.
Yeah.
I don't see those numbers. I don't see those numbers at all.
And listen to that. And it's not streaming anywhere. Think about that. So that just shows you how Western audiences, even though it's a big thing for younger people, we don't necessarily get this access to something that essentially is the Titanic of the last 10 years, right? Because it's essentially a love story. So I'll give you the basic nuts and bolts of this. First of all, as a lot of anime does, the animation is gorgeous. It's stunning, amazingly beautiful throughout this movie. And I can't accentuate enough how beautiful the animation is in this movie. So, but here's the basic concept. You've got a young woman named Mitsuha, and she lives in a kind of a mountainous, very rural area of Japan. And then you have a young man named Taki, and he lives in Tokyo. And early on, you see Matsuha, and she's living her life, and they're both like about 17, 18, or at least she's 17, I think, and he's maybe 18 or 19 or whatever. And she's living her life and kind of bored. She lives in the, small town, kind of the old story, right? She wants to live in the big, exciting city, and she wishes she was someone living there. And within the first few minutes, you see her wake up, and you see him wake up, and it's the classic body swap. And then when they fall back asleep, they're back in their bodies again. So for the first couple times, it's just played to comedic effect, And for the first beginning part of the movie, it's very much like almost like a teen romantic comedy from, in anime. You're like, okay, it's light and fun and whatever. And there's the fun things, when he's inside her body the first time, he's like just touching his own boobs. That's all he's doing right out of the gate, Her little sister comes in and goes, "What are you doing?" She's like, "Oh, sorry," it's just stuff like that. And very quickly they figure out that they can leave messages for each other. So when they come back to their bodies, maybe she has set him up on a date, or he has sent messages to her about doing certain things. And it's all good and fun. And this happens for a while until the point where they're starting to kind of get this communication between the two of themselves, kind of as they are cohabiting each other's bodies. And the other trick about that is when they come back, they don't know each other's names. So they don't know who the other person is. And in fact, the only way he has a clue of who she might be is at one point when he's there, he draws the place she lives, a picture of it, but he doesn't know what the name of it is or where it is. And then the communication stops. The body swapping stops. And that's where the movie takes a really interesting twist.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a high concept. There is an element of, I don't even want to tell you, because as the story progresses in the second 2/3, it's highly romantic. So it is a romance, but it's really cool. It's really cool how it plays out. And I would say this is definitely one of the most, it's one of the most satisfying, romances I've seen in a long time. I mean, it's not to the epic level of, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, but it's pretty damn close for a more lighthearted romance.
Does it tug at the heartstrings? Does it resonate?
For sure.
That? Oh,
for sure. And it has picture perfect romantic final moments. and I can't even describe it to you, but it's so good.
Wow.
This is like, and there are elements to it that are so cool, almost Lady Hawk. If you remember Lady Hawk, there's some elements that compare to that old movie.
Yes.
I'm not going to say exactly what, but if you know kind of the twist of that, there's a version of that happens in here.
Okay.
Characters are totally fun. It's the kind of thing someone my age may never come across if they don't search it out, and it's worth searching out.
Speaking of body switch movies, you were talking about Lady Hawk in the 80s. Pointed question to you, Bruce Perky. Is your name as good, if not better, than the 1987 Dudley Moore Kirk Cameron film Like Father, Like Son, which is a better movie?
I mean, come on. Like Father, Like no. Yeah.
Yeah, your name.
Kirk Cameron, I mean, he's an icon of our age.
So, yeah, your name. That sounds like such a fantastic film that's worth actually paying some money to watch.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Before we get to Eric Holmes' pick, back to you, Bruce. Can you not tease? What are we going to do next week regarding our director spotlight?
All right, next week for our director spotlight, we are going to be doing Satoshi Kon, also anime. I discovered him about a year ago. He's got 4 films. 4 films. That's it. Wow. Because he died too young. I'm going to suggest we do these 2 movies. Although I would say all of his movies are well worth watching. And Eric, if you want to go crazy, watch all 4. Go for it.
You know Eric's going to watch all 4.
Yeah, I'm going to suggest we do Millennium Actress.
Millennium Actress, okay.
And Perfect Blue.
Okay.
And I'm sure Perfect Blue is his first movie. Perfect Blue is his first movie. Millennium Actress is his second movie. They both are kind of 2 sides of the same coin in theme. And I will talk more about that when we watch it. And you can see Millennium Actress, I think, free streaming on a couple services. I'd have to go look it up again, either Tubi or Pluto or one of those.
I bet you everything's on Canopy. That's the ultimate streaming hack. I see everything on Canopy, man. But you were saying it could be streaming on Millennium Actress, could be streaming, or Perfect Blue?
Yeah. And when we talk about this guy, you're going to find out that in the few years he made films, which I think his total filmmaking, like feature filmmaking career was about a little over 10 years. Okay. He has had a huge impact on major directors post 2000 and is considered one of the top icons of animation. And I think he's a master filmmaker, like a master filmmaker. End right there.
Like Brian De Palma level, Bruce?
Actually.
Go. You can say it. You can say it.
Christopher Nolan level.
Not Millennium Actress, but I would say Christopher Nolan has stolen from him, by the way.
Wow.
Literally.
Or has he?
Literally.
Things go backwards.
It literally stolen from him. And we will find this out. But I was going to say, Perfect Blue, you might find a lot of similarities to Brian De Palma.
Oh, I am totally on that. Eric Holmes is going to just, Eric Holmes is just going to pull the rug right under you, Bruce, on that director spotlight next week. Because Eric Holmes, he does these things like, oh, by the way, in my research on YouTube, I found Satoshi Kon, his first student film. And just bring it up. Because you dig stuff up, Eric.
Go for it, man.
You're going to do it, man. I know you're going to do it. But what is your final recommendation for this pod to bring us out?
Oh, me?
Eric. So I'm going to come back to you.
Well, I got so we just talked about Ed Wood and how he's not a great filmmaker, but a passionate one. There's a movie I saw this in 2014, 15, and I saw it at a screening with the director there because a lot of it was shot here in Colorado Springs. There's a character played by my friend Chris Winters and another character played by my friend Jen Off. They're minor characters, but they're in there, so I know some people in the movie. And it's about AJ Nelson, aka Vic Savage, who was the director of The Creeping Terror. And this movie's called The Creep Behind the Camera. Unlike Ed Wood, this guy was an absolute monster. The movie opens up with him with a Hitler mustache and a Nazi hat on, Heil Hitlering and saying, "I am a god" in front of a camera or in front of a mirror while he's naked. This is one of those documentaries, kind of like Bernie, that's half documentary, half movie. We did another one similar, and I cannot think of it right now because I got donkey brains. This movie is really good, and it's pretty much everything. When you watch Tim Burton's Ed Wood, I'm assuming you guys get the same kind of emotional reaction that I did, where you get kind of like tingles, like, he really loved what he's doing, and you're really rooting for him. And this guy is the exact opposite. He's a fucking shithead. He's a fucking rapist. He's allegedly a murderer.
Wow.
This guy is the exact opposite of Ed Wood and everything you would hate in a human being. But the movie is so fucking. This would be the perfect double feature. Tim Burton's Ed Wood, and who is the director is Pete Schurman's The Creep Behind the Camera. Back to back.
That just seems like very tough to make a movie about a guy who's such a complete a-hole and degenerate and make it excellent. Like you're loving it.
Yeah, it's kind of like I was about to say it's kind of like following Darth Vader, but like Darth Vader at least has redeeming qualities. This guy's just a fucking shithead through and through. But it's fascinating, kind of like I don't know, watching a train wreck. I guess that's a cliche, but yeah, It kind of works here. Now, also unlike because we talked about Plan 9 from Outer Space, you can find that on YouTube. Many different copies, many different versions. This one, I believe it was on Shudder, no longer. I believe it was on Amazon, no longer. I think the only way you can watch this movie is if you're like me and you already have the DVD, or you go online and buy the Blu-ray. This would be a good example of a movie that, because it's a fantastic movie, and if you don't own it on physical media, then you're kind of SOL on this one. It was on Amazon not long ago because I saw it on there. I saw it on DVD, but and then this is just a good example of a really, really well-made movie, really great movie everyone should see, and the one that if you don't own it on physical media, you can't watch it.
There's a movie called Toto the Hero. It's a Belgian film. It's a Belgian film that was made, I think, in 91 or 92. One of my all-time favorite movies. I've only seen it twice. I saw it on VHS, and I've been waiting for years on end for Toto the Hero. And it's directed by the guy who did that movie, that Jared Leto film, Mr. Nobody. I don't know if you guys ever saw Mr. Nobody with Jared Leto. Yeah, I think his name is directed by Jacques Van Dormeel. And it took so long. And the idea, what you're saying about, sometimes with streaming, you can have a million streaming platforms and they're going to be up for a huge while. But sometimes when that window closes, you're screwed. So whether it's The Creep Behind the Camera, Toto the Hero was excellent, critically loved movie. Never streaming until recently. I had to pay $28 on my local like Best Buy store for the Arrow Video on Blu-ray. You know what I'm saying? So there are, I would say, I don't know what the count is, the ballpark figure, but there are, I would say, thousands of movies that we are not, there's like a fire here. The fire is, we look at the fire, and inside the fire are thousands of movies and all these streaming channels, but then some of the good stuff we're ignoring because we forget about them. And these forgotten movies may never show up on these streaming platforms at all. So I think, I hate to say it, conspiracy theorists is keep a collection. That's all I'm saying. Keep a hard disk collection of movies because you never know. So
can I throw something out there? I don't know how many people listen to us. I'm guessing the people that do listen to us also listen to Cinematics and also listen to the Film Vault. And on the Film Vault, they do the Amazon read through of the DVD movies. Since you can only get this movie on Blu-ray, if you can find it on Blu-ray through Amazon, maybe click through the Film Vault link and just buy The Creep Behind the Camera. It would, and I don't know if Anderson listens to this, but it'd be neat.
Yeah.
I imagine a couple of people just over the couple of weeks, like buying, and Anderson's reading The Creep Behind the Camera and just getting confused, like, what the fuck is it?
Why is there so many creep behind the cameras? Why does that keep happening?
And here, listeners, to Eric Holmes's point and Bruce Perky's point, please go. We're gonna wrap the show up with Bruce Perky's final recommendation, but please go to Bruce Perky's Rustomire YouTube channel because he has the unedited podcast of our shows up on his video channel. Okay. Now the most important reason why you should go to Rustomire channel, just as much the important reason why you should buy as many Blu-rays and DVDs as possible, is Eric Holmes's comment about click through this Amazon link so you can support the Film Vault. I'm going to edit that out. That's not going to be on the final podcast, because if you want to go through our click through Amazon link, support Bruce Perky, Eric Holmes, and Greg Srizavasti, aka the main guy from Spree. Click through our Amazon link so the money will go through us. Eric Holmes, you're going to say.
Do that unless you're buying The Creep Behind the Camera. Then do that through the Film Vault.
Fair enough. You know what? Eric Holmes, it's Eric Holmes' call. This will support the Film Vault because that was his recommendation. I was kidding on that. But Bruce Perky, you're going to round us out with one final recommendation before we go? Maybe?
Yes, one final recommendation, very quick, because it's kind of a rewind of something I've already done.
Yeah.
So I came here a while back, and I had said I was one season into Avatar: The Last Airbender. This is it's a TV, obviously, so it's a suggestion, but I think it's a great suggestion for, especially if you have kids. So this is a perfect example of how sometimes your kids can bring something to you that you may have never watched. So my 11-year-old challenged me to watch this show with him. So basically every night we'd watch an episode or two, and we made it through all 3 seasons. It's a complete story arc, 3 seasons long. And the finale and the character arcs of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I said this on Facebook, and I'll say it again, it's better than Lord of the Rings, and it's better than Star Wars. It's so good. It's amazing characters throughout, and beautiful and amazing action. It's just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful series. I know I'm late to the party for a lot of people, but I'm guessing there's a lot of people like me, maybe some dads or moms out there who would never watch something like this. And it's on Netflix, the whole series. You can watch.
That's like saying that's the top shelf storytelling that there is almost no peer. As far as that's like really high, really
for fantasy trilogies. It's a trilogy because it's 3 seasons: book 1, book 2, and book 3. The character arcs, the action, the finale, the villains, the changes the characters go through are better than all those series. Consistently better.
Wow. Is that a popular opinion? I mean, what I'm saying is, have you seen people say that same thing? Because or surprised at the quality of it,
I would say people that have been raised with it, because it came out in like the late thousands, like 2008, 2009, I think is when it originally came out. I would say the people that are probably like 20 or younger who watched it when they're younger, I bet you a lot of them think it's better and like it better than those other series.
Wow. Surprised, Eric Holmes?
A little bit. Okay. I've heard great things about it, but it was just like I wasn't excited enough to watch the cartoon. I wasn't excited enough to watch the movie, which I guess is not good. But
no, the movie is a different animal altogether. Yeah. But I'll just add a little bit to it. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. 1977, I was like 12. I mean, I loved the original trilogy, but the character arc, I can't even tell you. The character arcs in this movie are so good. So good. And it's so much fun. It's not serious, deadly serious. It has fun, stupid comedy also included with epic, adventure. And one thing I would describe about it, for example, that makes it so good, and this is something that any action movie or any fantasy movie needs to learn. Every single battle and fight in this series, every single one is different than the one before and unique and adds on to the mythos of the one before. So other, like you see like a lightsaber battle in Star Wars, they all kind of start to blend together. They're all pretty much lightsaber battles. This isn't like that. Every single one is different and exciting.
Wow. You know what? Bruce Purkey's throwing down the gauntlet, Eric Holmes. He actually says, I don't even want to ask him if the action sequences are better than a Scott Adkins film, because that might be sacrilege to you and me. I don't know.
That's not fair. We all know Scott Adkins action scenes are the best.
Okay,
even better than the opera
category.
scene at the beginning of Tenet.
That's Atkins and oranges. Atkins and oranges.
Atkins and oranges. So that's The Last Bender, directed by M. Night Shyamalan, right? Is that?
Oh God. Yes, absolutely.
No, it's I'm sorry, it's streaming on Netflix. But do you even say, very quickly before you go, as much as the series is good, would you even, if you're such a diehard fan, should you never ever watch that M. Night movie? Should no one ever touch that? Or is it a curio piece? Can it exist as a curio piece at least?
I haven't watched it yet. My kid said he watched a few minutes of it because my child watched the whole series and then watched it again with me because he wanted me to watch it. So once again, I guess the point is, you listen to your kids sometimes. Sometimes they know stuff you don't know. But if you watch the series, you immediately know there's no way you could do this as a movie, like as a 120-minute movie or whatever they made it.
Wow.
There's just no way. It's impossible.
Okay, that is very cool. This was our meatiest podcast. I was gonna say something.
Eat it like a meatball.
Yeah, I was gonna say something about me being a vegetarian, but that would have been a stupid joke. But yeah, it was great. It was great having Brad Finney.
Yes.
Listeners, yeah, great. Listeners, we're gonna put in our show notes his Spotify page. I definitely want you guys to listen to some of that music. It's really interesting. And yeah, join our Cinematics Facebook group. Cinematics is another podcast I do with Anderson Cowan. We mention Anderson a lot on the show. That's how this podcast has arisen, thanks to the whole Cinematics thing. We were moving the mainline before, but a lot of the things we're doing is, like Eric Holmes and Bruce have been saying, it's like film curation. I need to get on the ball with that, but I'm so excited for our next, Satoshi Kon. Satoshi Kon spotlight next week. And again, our recent spotlight was thanks to Eric Holmes, Elise Guy Blaché, a look at the life of Elise Guy Blaché. So definitely look at our previous episode if you really want to know more about the first female filmmaker in cinema. We are going to finally lead out this.
Hey, back that up. First filmmaker.
Eric,
first female.
Hey, Eric, will you stop telling Greg to back that up? You do that every week.
Back that ass up. It's not, Elise Guy Blaché is not the first female director.
It's just rude and just demeaning.
Bruce, I also objected when Pamela B. Green, the director, she just basically said, yeah, you know what, Greg, I would definitely want to get interviewed by you guys, but can you please make it Eric Holmes? So I decided, I just almost kabodged that interview because you were very passionate about Elise Guy Blaché. And yes, first filmmaker, 1896, folks. You got to give it credit. Man, woman, she's just a stud filmmaker and a pioneer. Okay, pioneer. Did I make that one better, Eric?
Yes, that was perfect. Yeah, I'm sorry. Bruce is right. I need to shut up, but
no, you
back it up. You got it.
Back it in. Let me begin. Okay.
Let me begin. Okay, music license. Eric Holmes, can you lead us out on anything to say before we get out of here?
John Was Trying to Contact Aliens is a 15-minute documentary on Netflix. It is good, but not long enough for worth a full review. But we're checking out 15 minutes, Netflix. John Was Trying to Contact Aliens. Check it out.
Okay, guys. We will see you next week, and when we get to Satoshi Kon and a lot of other stuff. And have a great week watching movies.